Hello and welcome to the big picture. The first round of elections of 2012 is about to end. The last phase, that is the seventh phase of polling in Uttar Pradesh, is to be held on March 3rd, and tomorrow is the last date for campaigning. We have seen a long campaign in the last 1.5 months in the 5 states which are going to polls. Uttar Pradesh is the focus of all these 5 states, obviously, because not only it is big, but also because of the national importance the results of these elections are going to have. So today we are trying to look at the end of the campaign for the Uttar Pradesh elections. What has changed? What kind of matrix has changed in the UP elections this time? To discuss this, I have with me Mr. Vinod Sharma, political editor of the Hindustan Times, Smita Gupta, deputy editor of the Hindu, and Venkitesh Ramakrishnan, deputy editor of the Frontline. All three have been traveling extensively in Uttar Pradesh in the last several weeks, and today we hope to find some answers to the many questions which have been raised during the campaign in these elections. Welcome to all of you. First, let me go to Vinod Sharma. Vinod, you just come back. Do you see, first, let us just try to flag some issues which have come out of these elections. What are the major issues which you have noticed in these elections?
Well, it's natural to compare what's expected out of these elections with what was there after 2007 assembly elections.
Absolutely.
And I think the high point of those elections was the rainbow coalition that Mayawati could put together to garner a majority of her own, which was much against popular predictions, much against what all the media had been saying and her political rivals have been expecting. In these elections, that rainbow coalition does not exist, it is cracked up.
Okay,
and thereby,
that's one point. Next two, just give me three points, and then we'll discuss all these points in detail later.
And while this rainbow coalition is cracked up, there are 3 caste constituencies that remain intact in support of their chosen political parties.
Yes.
For instance, the Yadavs are intact in support of the Samajawadi party.
Right.
Jatavs are intact in support of Mayawati. And Jats are intact in support of the RLD. So up for grabs, the point number 3, are other communities.
Okay.
And they, in all these communities, I see, at least subjectively, a 3-way or a 4-way split happening, depending on what factors are prevailing in individual constituencies.
Okay. Smita, 3 points, 3 issues, or 3 factors which you have noticed in the election, which is, which is it, if it is unique?
Other than the ones
other than the ones which
okay.
Vinod
Well, I mean, it's a popular sort of notion that, developmental issues, Vikas has become a big issue. But while when you talk to voters in UP, right across UP, they will talk about those issues. When it comes to the crux, the real issues in this election remain caste and religion. That is number one factor. The second, despite whatever people are saying, I mean, everybody knows that Mulayam Singh Yadav's Samajawadi party is, the front runner. But I think a point that most people are not noticing is that the BJP is going to do better than expected.
Okay. Any more very important, significant issue which you have in your mind?
Well, though the Congress's vote percentage is certainly going to increase, I still feel that it's going to be at the bottom of the table.
Okay. Venkatesh?
Well,
I think you're one of the few journalists who have traveled to all the districts in UP in this election.
well, not
almost.
Not all the districts. I mean, most of them.
Yeah.
I would only add to what Vinod and Smita. Because basically, I think this election has been summed up very well by them. I would like to qualify what Vinod said about the split in the other camps, that is the non-committed social groups, which are going from constituency to constituency, in separate ways.
Yes.
This, of course, this depends on the multiple anti-incumbency factors which have come up. Like for example, there is an anti-incumbency factor against the state government, there is the anti-incumbency against the MLA, and somewhat surprisingly for the first time in an assembly election, I have seen anti-incumbency against the central government. This is a very, very interesting dimension to this election. So given all these factors, and among these of course predominantly is the anti-incumbency against the state government. And what I have seen significantly, especially in eastern Uttar Pradesh, is a very important and significant marked shift of the upper caste Brahmin community towards Samajawadi Party, which has come as a very, very major surprise if you ask. And I think that's going to have a very, very deep impact on the electoral results.
When you talk of upper caste shifting to Samajawadi Party, do you mean the Rajputs and maybe Caste and people like that, or including Brahmins also?
Predominantly Brahmins. In fact, in several villages across eastern Uttar Pradesh, I have been told by a number of Brahmin community leaders is that according to them this election is the Baspa Hatao election. And for them, when they go through various constituencies, of course they are also doing tactical voting. They want to vote for the party which will get rid of Baspa. And in this, the SP scores higher than most of the parties.
Okay. Vinod, did you also notice this? And you of course, initially the first point itself was that coalition is breaking up, which means the Brahmins are moving. But the Brahmins going towards Samajawadi Party, is it a surprise?
No, it would be a surprise because, if they are going to the Samajawadi Party, the reasons for going to the Samaj Party are the same as the reasons which propelled them towards BSP. Because in 2007, Mayawati was the only demon killer, so to speak.
Right.
Because in those elections, law and order was a major issue where Mulayam Singh had failed. And I remember VP Singh having told me, and he was one fellow who predicted that Mayawati could form a government of her own, and I asked him why. And he said that she's amongst the various contestants, she's the only demon killer. And you see, he says Vikas is an issue, but then the way it gravitates people towards them, is not the same as a demon killer doing, because you have innumerable temples of Lord Rama and Lord Krishna, both of whom were demon killers, and you have just one temple of Brahma in this country, which is the development god. Now, it was his own way of explaining the Indian psyche, which may not be very scientific in its approach, but I personally feel that the Brahmins do tend to gravitate towards a political party that seems to be the winner. And why shouldn't they, for instance, because they have been out of power together with the Congress for a long, long time in Uttar Pradesh. And that is why perhaps they are going there. The BJP has ceased to be a viable option for them, is another surprise to me, because that's the party that wants to keep the Brahminical order.
Smita's point is that BJP will do better than what most people are expecting. And Smita, coming to you, this issue which has been raised by Venkitesh, saying that the Brahmins and Rajputs Brahmins especially are going towards Samajawadi Party. Did you notice that also?
Yeah, I did. I'll tell you, but I'll qualify that. The Brahmins in 2007, we don't know whether they actually voted BSP, but they created the mood, the atmosphere for people to vote for the BSP. In this election too, they are creating that mood to vote for the Samajwadi. Because
vote against the BSP.
Against the BSP, especially as he pointed out in Eastern UP, it's like a wave over there with the Brahmins. Thakurs anyway are with the Samajwadi in that part. And so I cannot say with any sort of guarantee that they will actually cast their own votes, but they will create. Because you see, Brahmins are very important in UP. They are the sort of opinion makers. People follow their lead.
Okay. So we will continue this discussion. It's very interesting that among all the issues which you people have raised, we will also discuss how much corruption. And there is another very important issue which we thought would become important in the election, especially the gambit played by Mayawati to divide the state. We will discuss all these things. We need to go into a short break now. We'll come back very soon. Please keep watching. Welcome back. We are discussing the Uttar Pradesh elections 2012 and seeing how the matrix has changed this time. Venkatesh, corruption, one of the issues which everybody, and there are major issues, NRHM scam, Narega scam and all those things. Have they had any impact in these elections? Are they talking points? Of course, Rahul Gandhi is talking about it all over the place, but among the people, what kind of response are you seeing?
Certainly corruption is an issue. I mean, it is not just the big cases like the National Rural Health Mission scam, which has captured so many headlines because of the series of killings related to the case.
Right.
It's not just these cases. There have been other small cases which you see across the state in each and every district, like the appointments of class 4 employees or the appointment of teachers. The kind of refrain that you hear across the state is that for every single appointment, there has been a steady and consistent demand for bribes from various sections of the administration.
So the jobs are on sale?
Jobs are on sale.
Okay.
Transfers are on sale. This was not the case with Mayawati's earlier governments, especially at the lower level. I mean, of course, one had heard about what is called as len-den in Uttar Pradesh for the higher positions in bureaucracy and the police.
Right.
But apparently, in the current regime, in the last 5 years, this has kind of become decentralized to such an extent.
It has trickled down.
Yeah.
There has been a trickle down. Vinod, has this been your experience also during your travels about people talking about corruption on these lines? How it has trickled down?
Well, corruption is an issue. There is no doubt about it. But I wonder whether it's an issue that which propels the voter to the polling station to vote on that issue.
To vote against the government.
You must understand that in these elections, about 1.25 crore people are first-time voters.
Yes.
And surely they are driven by identity, but there is some peppering of aspiration as well. And one must also not forget that Mayawati, though she is being accused of many things, that Mayawati was successful on the law and order front, and she was also successful to some extent on the development front, though her idea of development was derided in the living rooms in Delhi, but she was going about the task in her own way. After all, she wanted to keep the legacy alive, maybe in terms of statues or huge
beautification.
But you see,
I read somewhere that Lucknow is now a much more beautiful city.
I will tell you one thing. Remember when Lalu Yadav was at his peak, and there used to be a lot of controversy over the frequent use of choppers by him, and he would say that "Garib ke bacche ko udan khatola mein dekh nahi sakta koi." That psychology works amongst her core constituents, which are the Dalits.
Right.
And I must tell you that it's not just the Jatavs. I personally feel that the non-Jatavs as well are solidly with Mayawati. And if this remains to be the story, then a division of Muslim vote and other votes, in fact, is a division of anti-incumbency vote.
Right.
And that is where her chance of logging a good score remains.
Much better than what one expects.
Especially in the elections that were held in Western UP, 68 seats that went to polls 2 days back, and also the coming part of the elections in Western UP, though Mulayam has his areas of support there.
Okay.
And secondly, a point where the Congress was weak was in terms of talking points that would have helped them garner votes. For instance, I did not hear any Congress leader telling the electorate, especially the Muslims, who are split between Samajawadi and the Congress, that why should they be voting for Mulayam in Western UP, in large parts of Western UP, where he lacks a base vote.
We'll talk about
the
base
that. Vote of Yadav
we'll talk about the reservation. We'll talk about the
in the issue of it exists in other parts of UP.
We'll talk about the issue of Muslim reservation, which was raised by the Congress leaders. But quickly, on corruption.
Well, I think corruption, I agree, is an issue, but corruption is also being looked at through the prism of caste. So therefore, when the kind of examples that Venkatesh listed, those really affected mostly affected the non-Jatavs.
Okay.
You know.
So the Jatav base remains.
And the Jatavs
as Vinod, very rightly at the beginning of the thing pointed out, the three castes are where they are.
But I just want to add one thing on this crime, control of crime.
Right.
That's a big issue. And for the Jatavs, that has been a key issue. It means that their complaints are lodged in thanas.
Absolutely.
And they get a hearing at district courts,
right.
which they were not able to do earlier. Not completely, they would, but much more than in the past. And
they
for the upper caste,
they get some response from the police stations.
And the fact that the upper caste, that Dalits are able to file FIRs against upper caste is also a key reason why there's a mood against Mayawati.
Let us try to discuss this issue of Mayawati. Before the elections were announced, she made this gambit of division of UP, but that just doesn't seem to have made any impact at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose the basic thrust of Mayawati's announcement was to set a cat among the pigeons.
It didn't happen.
No. It did divert the attention of the other political parties as well as sections of the electorate for a small period. Perhaps I think Mayawati expected only that much from that announcement, because anybody who knows Uttar Pradesh would know that none of these areas which were supposedly going to be new states. None of these areas have a subjective, emotive element in terms of...
Exactly. Vinod, so that means that a section of people from whom we keep hearing that Poorvanchal is we need to have Poorvanchal, or even Harit Pradesh, which so many, it just doesn't have any emotive appeal at all.
It doesn't.
Huh?
It doesn't, because it isn't an issue, the kind of issue Jharkhand was in Madhya Pradesh.
Yes, or Chhattisgarh
was. Or to some extent Uttarakhand was, because there was a lot of disparity between the hill people and the people in the plains.
Absolutely.
So it isn't an emotive issue. And I wonder why Mayawati raised it, perhaps to capture the airwaves for a while. And maybe it was a gambit which hasn't paid dividends. It's not an issue. But of course, development is an issue. Opportunity is an issue. Aspiration drives the voters, younger voters especially. In these elections, the turnout of women has been very high. And that is one imponderable we must discuss and understand.
We need to go to a short break. We will discuss the issue of high voter turnout and what it means in this election. We need to go into a short break now. We'll come back soon. Please keep watching. Welcome back. We are discussing the Uttar Pradesh elections 2012 and seeing how the matrix has changed this time. Smita, there are 2-3 important issues which we still, I think, we need to discuss. So let us, keep everything short. Voter turnout, this high voter turnout, it's exciting people, but everybody is confused what it means.
Well, I'll tell you, there are 2-3 reasons. One is the obvious one, the Election Commission has run a huge campaign. Number 2, there are about 1 crore and more new voters. But actually what is more significant is that this high voter turnout also means that it's an anti-incumbency vote. There are people who actually want to vote this governor. But fourthly, a high voter turnout means a fractured verdict. On the two occasions in recent times when you have got a verdict, like in 2007 and 91, there was a very low voter turnout.
Right. So conventional wisdom, Vinod, says that high voter turnout, anti-incumbency.
Yes, of course, anti-incumbency, and also perhaps the gravitational pull of 3 young faces.
Absolutely.
Which is Akhilesh Yadav in SP, Rahul Gandhi in Congress, and Jain Chaudhary amongst the Jats. And I think that they have driven this election largely. Regardless of the outcome of these elections, they are there to stay for a long, long time. And for what, I don't know for what reasons, because no political party wanted to talk about a post-poll alliance, because everybody is claiming that they are going to form the government. But if this election was contested together by the Samajawadi, RLD and the Congress, they would have swept the polls. For the simple reason that the government which will be formed, and if it is a Congress, RLD, SP government, then it will be run by 3 young minds.
Very young minds. That's right. Venkatesh, let us look at the other issue. This, this youth factor. I'm not talking of the leaders, the 3 leaders with whom Vinod mentioned, but the new voters which Smita was talking about, nearly 1.5 crore new voters. Are they thinking differently from the traditional voters, from the older voters at all? Do you see that happening at all?
No. There is, of course, the point is, in Uttar Pradesh, you can't just wish away identity politics. Absolutely. It is something which is there, which has been there for the last, so many decades, and very strongly for the last 2 decades. And you just can't think that, from one fine morning,
all the youngsters will wake up and, forget all these things.
Yeah. So, basically, this great youth upheaval, so-called youth upheaval, is based on and founded upon the identity factors of the Yadavs, the Jats, and of course, some section of
Jataus and
all these factors. And of course, having said that, just to supplement what Vinod was saying, there was this comment from one BJP leader in Eastern Uttar Pradesh. I asked him, how is your party going to fare? So he said, in the final analysis, the iPad boys have taken over this election.
So it's very interesting, the iPad boys. So there is iPad boys on one side, and then there is somebody like Uma Bharti on the other side. What is Uma Bharti's role in this at all? Very briefly.
Well, you see quite clearly, in this election, which is driven by identity, the BJP lacked an identity.
Absolutely.
In the sense that they lacked a face.
Yes.
And they got a face. They got this face from the nearby Madhya Pradesh
an imported face
to their campaign. And maybe to some extent they might have succeeded because she belongs to the backward community. But at the same time, each time you project a backward leader, there is a reaction amongst the forward castes. This was the experience during Kalyan Singh's time. This was also the experience of the BJP when they set up a government in tandem with the BSP. That government was the result of an accord at the top.
Right.
But because an accord lacked amongst their constituents at the grassroots, that government did not survive.
Right.
And likewise, if the forward castes are today unhappy with Mayawati, is largely on account of, as it was pointed out earlier in the discussions, registration of cases, and sometimes even cases under the Harijan Act, which the empowered Harijans tend to sometimes use against other communities that have been exploiting them in the past.
Okay. Mandir, there was an attempt to revive the Mandir issue by the BJP, by Mr. Advani and all. It's over?
No. Yeah, so there is no Mandir issue.
It's over now.
It's over.
It's over. So Mandir is over. So what about the Congress's development mantra, which Rahul Gandhi has gone from campaign to campaign? He has spoken about the development mantra. Has it yielded any results, you think? Second thing is very important what Venkatesh in the first round was pointing out, an anti-incumbency against the centre.
Look, I tell you,
how do you see these two things?
Anti-incumbency against the centre, I would rather redefine it as anti-incumbency against the Member of Parliament.
Sorry?
Not against the Member of Parliament.
Right.
The sitting Member of Parliament. It was very evident in Math, from where Jayant is contesting and is facing tough time at the hands of a 6-time MLA who is present and accessible and of great help to the constituents, while Jayant has
So it is not actually against the central government, but against the
mostly against MPs.
MPs.
But
do you think so?
No, I'll tell you, he's right that many of the MPs are because of anti-incumbency against the MPs. But I would agree with Venkitesh that there's certainly the Anna Hazare campaign, not Anna Hazare, but the issue that he flagged. That kind of, see, 2009, in the Lok Sabha election, Congress won 22 Lok Sabha seats.
Right, absolutely.
And that, they lost that
and converted into assembly seats, it meant about 95 or something.
But can I come in here for a minute?
Very quickly, Vinod.
You see, this election in this election, the Congress is back on its 2 feet.
Right.
Okay? Regardless of what number of seats
Absolutely.
it wins. And from constituency after constituency that I traveled, people were saying that in 2004, 2014 shall belong to Rahul Gandhi. Okay. Because the big ticket will go to the Congress.
Okay. Last words to you, Venkatesh. We just didn't have much time to discuss about the Muslim reservation issue, which the Congress leaders tried to, You think what kind of impact it has had on the electorate, especially the Muslim electorate, quickly?
No, I think, I would like to look at the Congress campaign per se. I mean, both the developmental plank as well as the Muslim reservation plank. The Congress did not present it in a manner which was credible. In fact, both the Rahul Gandhi's campaign on development, his campaign against corruption, and the campaign of Salman Khurshid's and Digvijay Singh's, championing the cause of the Muslims in various forms.
Yes.
This lacked absolute credibility. And if you go to Muslim villages across the state, the question that they were asking, the Muslim community was asking, is how come they remembered these issues at this point of time?
Absolutely. Okay, Vinod, I'll give a last word to you. You think this is where the Congress may have a problem?
No, obviously
last word to you.
There are obviously questions about the way the Congress went about it. There is also a feeling of cynicism amongst the Muslims. But the fact remains that elections to state assemblies, in terms of their complexion and their outcome, have always been different from elections to parliament. And it will not be proper to compare the result of this election with the 2009 Lok Sabha election.
Right.
It should be compared with the 2007 Assembly election.
Okay, we have completely run out of time. Anyway, it is very interesting. We discussed so many issues which have cropped up during this election. It's quite evident that the matrix has changed, but what will be the final outcome is something which nobody at this point of time is willing to take a bet on. So the suspense will continue till March 6th. Please keep watching. Thanks to all my guests, Mr. Vinod Sharma, Smita Gupta and Venkitesh Ramakrishnan. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture.